Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. The end of the month brings us the jcwings announcements, as is often the case. I must apologise, last month at the end of December I didn't do a video on the December JC announcements. Just didn't have the time with the holidays and everything like that, but yeah, it was a very JC set. There was some really interesting aircraft made there. There's a wonderful little Bombardier House Colours -8. There's a very nice Antonov 32, a Slovakian F100. So some interesting, unusual aircraft. There's a Mexican at DC-9 as well. The reappearance of the JetX mold after many years in the wilderness. There was also some less interesting aircraft. The usual selection of repeats and aircraft on old molds. A 747 SP, a 757, so on. A repeat lot 767, and you get the theme of that. It was, you know, a very JC month, and that kind of is similar this month as well. It's a very JC month in the sense that you've got a lot of re-releases, but also a few real gems in there too. And yeah, I feel JC does get away with it a little bit, whereas NG's obviously been getting a lot of criticism, rightly so, for re-releasing a lot of aircraft. JC does exactly the same thing. It just staggers the re-releases out over a longer period of time. And nowadays, obviously, quite a lot of jcwings boxes, when you get the model, they have both versions of the aircraft on it, and a little tick saying which version you're getting. Anyway, it's quite a large month because, as we know, jcwings have increased their production, so now they're putting out over 20 models a month, and there are 23 announcements in this bunch. And that's a direct response to NG doing something similar. And again, absolutely nothing wrong with that. More models, the merrier in my universe. Before we get into looking at these releases, obviously check me out on my other channels at Yes to Airlines on Instagram and Facebook. Chuck a like on the video if you like the content, and please subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate that. But let's get on and have a look at what jcwings have just announced in the last week or so. Models that will most likely, I would gather, be arriving at retailers probably April or May time, given the usual delays with JC production and also the upcoming Chinese New Year. So starting off with the Airbuses, of which there are only 4 this month, and none of them are real masterpieces because the Airbus molds are often areas where jcwings hasn't got top of the class. And we start with an EasyJet Europe Airbus A320. It's got the Berlin titles on it. This is registered OEIZQ, the Austrian subsidiary of EasyJet that they had to start because of Brexit. Scheme's quite nice, and this isn't the first time that JC have produced an EasyJet special scheme like this, with the titles that come up that kind of rear portion of the fuselage, which is quite a cool idea. They've done an Austria version, OEIVA. They did that probably not too long ago, to be honest, but actually it was 2020, it was a while ago. It wouldn't surprise me if some was made at the same time, to be honest. I don't necessarily rate the JC A320 mould that highly, but then again, it's not dreadful either. And this one with the CFMs, the engines are a little large, but it's okay. I do know that these seem to be selling well because there's a real dearth of EasyJet. I mean, I'm not really interested in these low-cost airlines, but I know they're very popular with younger collectors who like to collect what they see at their airports. So I can imagine this one will sell super well in Europe and do very nicely and be quite sought after. But I struggle to put it anywhere but workhorse. It's be a perfectly fine model, but yeah, it doesn't look that great from the pictures I'm seeing, and the mold doesn't thrill me. So I'm going to put this one in workhorse. You might consider this to be a high flyer, and yeah, maybe it's on the border, but I think I'll workhorse it. Next up, we've got another A320 for a low-cost airline, but we're traveling to the other side of the planet. We're going to Taiwan. It's Tiger Air Taiwan. The reg is B518. It's quite a nice scheme, and this is the last bit of Tiger Airways that still exists, basically, the Tiger Air Taiwan portion of the carrier, or I guess it was there were several of them, weren't there? There was one in Japan, there's one in Australia, there was the primary one, I think it's Singapore. So there have been lots of tiger airs, none of them very successful. And again, the model looks actually okay here, to be honest. It looks fine. I think it'll be decent enough. It's not thrilling me. There has been some Tiger Air Taiwan made before, but they have all been Neos. Yeah, it's a decent release. I'm going to work on this one again, mainly because of the mold, I think, again. But this one actually looks decent. And in fact, this kind of story kind of repeats through these Airbuses, so I'll be quick on these. The next one up is an A321. It's Condor, it's DATCG, it's got the red stripes version of it. This aircraft has all been made by ngmodels and Phoenix. So there are two versions of this out there. They arguably are both probably a little bit nicer than the jcwings version, which will be fine, but it's nothing special. It's a workhorse model, definitely. And next up, again, another workhorse, a Cathay Dragon A330. The reg is BLBF. There have been, 8 other Cathay Dragon A330s made by quite a wide variety of manufacturers. We've got Aviation 400, Panda, Phoenix, and jcwings, unsurprisingly, have made a couple as well. They're not all in the standard scheme, but at least 3 or 4 of them are, and it would be very surprising if you were a Cathay collector and you didn't already own one of the previous releases. I myself have got a couple. I've got one of the Panda ones wearing the 20th anniversary logo, and I've got the standard scheme on a Phoenix. So, I don't need this, and it isn't as good as those previous versions anyway. So, again, workhorse, that one. So now we move off into Boeing territory, and there's quite a substantial chunk of Boeing aircraft this month. And one of those is a 737-300, and that is in the colours of Air New Zealand, wearing the Pacific Wave scheme. This is the second recent Air New Zealand release by jcwings. They also did the Air New Zealand Holidays green colours. As with that one, this model has been made previously by Aero Classics, and I own that version, so I don't need to buy this one. Having said that, it actually looks pretty good. Obviously, you're probably reasonably well acquainted with this mold. It's an old mold, but it's not a dreadful mold. And the model pictures I'm seeing here, it looks pretty decent, and they've updated with the aerials and things, and it looks fine. The reg is ZKNGD, which is a new reg. I don't think that's been made before. The model looks like it will be nice, and it would be a model I'd be getting if I didn't already own the Aero Classics version. I like the fact they're releasing some 737 Classics. Very few of these are being made. Panda makes a few here and there, but not many. And yeah, I'm going to put this one up in the high flyer. I think this is a solid looking release. It's just not one that I personally need to get. But that is the only 737 Classic this month. There are a couple of next generation 737s, which are the next 2 models to look at. And I've been on record in recent times as saying that I don't really like the mould very much. In fact, I don't like the mould at all, and it really doesn't compare well to the ngmodels mould or the Panda mould. The first one of these new announcement models is Gol. It's in the new colours. The registration of the aircraft is PRGUQ. Yeah, it doesn't look great. The colours are quite nice, but it's been made anyway by ngmodels. They've made a couple of versions of this already in recent times, so it doesn't really need to be made. And in fact, looking at things, there is also a version of this that's been made by Gemini recently too. So it's a bit funny that there's a version coming from these guys. I think the difference here is that it doesn't have the viewagol.com titles after the main goal, but otherwise it's going to be pretty much the same. And as I say, both versions have been made by NG anyway. So yeah, I'm going to put this one in to gas guzzle. I don't like the mould. I should also say Phoenix have made it too, but they weren't awful. The next one up is quite unique. It's not been made by anyone else before. It's Scandinavian. It's got the Starline scheme on it. The reg is LNRR Echo. Everything, unfortunately, applies to it. It would be a really good choice for a 737-800, and no one else has made it, but the mould just looks dreadful. And the model pictures I'm seeing of the finished article, yeah, they don't look good. So that was going to go gas guzzler too. There's one last 737 this month. and it's a Max, for the Max mold from JC. This one's in the colours of the now defunct Romanian low-cost carrier Blue Air. The reg is YRMX Charlie. This one looks quite nice, and it is unique. No one else has made this Blue Air release. In fact, no one else has made any Blue Air aircraft in 400 scale, and now considering the airline's gone bankrupt, they probably won't. I think this one is going to be pretty decent. I'm going to put this one up into high flyer, I think. Okay, so that rounds up the 737s, and now we're moving into the jumbos, of which there's a few this month. And we begin with the sort of example which is incredibly jcwings in the sense that it's a little bit obscure but quite interesting. JC has this habit of producing quite random airlines on the periphery of the mainstream, often cargo-related airlines, and this is one of those. The airline is called Skygate Airlines, and it's actually a carrier I wasn't particularly familiar with. It was, because it no longer is operational, a Russian cargo airline that was founded in 2016, and it looks like that it ceased operations in 2022, no doubt due to sanctions in relation to the Ukrainian war. They operate a pair of 747-400s, which have now both passed to Silkway West, the Azerbaijani carrier. And interestingly, jcwings have had a Silkway West version of this exact same frame, actually, on pre-order as one of their future models for quite some time. So it's really weird that now they've got the Skygates version, and it's out before the one which was announced a while ago. But it's an interesting scheme. The Silkway one just uses the Skygates base scheme, and the Skygates base scheme is really very attractive. It's got this, silver base, and I'm not really sure what the logo is supposed to be, but it looks pretty cool anyway on the tail. And this model looks like it'll be really nice. The reg is VPBCH. It is using the new interactive 747-400 freighter mold, which is a nice mold. Obviously, you've got to like the interactive concept on the 747s. I do. I think that it works nicely. And they don't have a non-interactive 747-400 freighter version of this mold. They've got the old one, but the seamed version, but not a more modern version. Yeah, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, what the hell's this? But now I'm looking at it, and I'm rather intrigued by it. And I didn't even realise the airline was Russian, and that makes it a bit more interesting for me because I do collect Russian airlines. Not sure I'll get it, but I like it. And I think that I'm going to put this one into high flyer. It's a good mold, interesting airline. It's not going to be made by anyone else anytime soon because it is a little bit obscure and it doesn't exist anymore, but a great choice, really. Nice selection there, actually. So that's a good start to the 747s. That is the only 747 Classic, if that's what they're called, in this month's releases, but we do have 4 747-8s, 3 of which are 747-8Is, and I guess, in a sense, jcwings is trying to get their money back from this mold, or trying to get maximum usage out of it, because I know that they've got a BA Landor version incoming as well, a fantasy release, but these ones aren't quite as interesting as that. They're all effectively re-releases. Start off with a Boeing house colours. It's in the Sunrise scheme, which I'm not even 100% certain ever actually was put on a real aeroplane. But regardless of that, it's been made twice before by jcwings. So this is a direct repeat of those previous releases, one of which I actually own. I own the version which was made in 2019, so it's been a few years, assuming that they weren't all just made at the same time and drilled out of the warehouse over time. Perfectly decent model, but it's a workhorse, isn't it? Because it's a remake. A multiple remake. Next up is a Korean Air 747-8I. HL7631 is the reg, and again, there have been 13 other 747-8s in Korean Air schemes, some of them freighters, some of them passenger airliners, some by Phoenix, one on that weird mould that Aero Classics got for a single release, and a couple of jcwings ones. One most recently in a special scheme, but two previous to that are in the standard scheme. So again, yeah, I'm going to workhorse this one. I think that it probably sell well and people will be interested in it, but yeah, it's nothing special. And similarly, the next one is a bit of a stretch, I think, for even being made. It's a second Q80 government 747-8. This one's a BBJ. It's exactly the same reg as the earlier one, 9K GAA, because they've only got the one, I think. And yeah, I just don't really understand why this model's been made again, or maybe they just split the original. I mean, is this taking it to extreme where you're just not even changing the model and re-releasing it again as a separate release? I'm not sure if there's anything different about it. It doesn't look like there is. So yeah, there's workhorse as well. So those three really quick, not very interesting. But the next 747-8 is a freighter, and this one is a bit more interesting. This one's in the colours of Nippon Cargo Airlines. JA11K Zulu is the registration. As I say, it's the freighter, but the difference here from previous releases, and Gemini did make an interactive series not long ago. This one is not interactive. Phoenix have made a couple too. Is the difference here is that it has this blue nose cone on it, which does change the scheme up a little bit. It makes it look quite different when you change the nose cone. It does look quite cool, and this one I think is better than the passenger versions, which are frankly all just kind of the same. At least it is slightly different. I'm going to put this one into high flyer. Okay, now we were just over halfway through the Boeings. There are plenty more to discuss. And the next one is a 757, Northern Pacific Airways. I believe now it's called New Pacific Airways after some complaints. N627NP is the registration. It's going to be exactly the same as N628NP they released a while back, and therefore it is clearly a workhorse. Not much more to say about that. The mold is old. It looks okay. They've updated it, but it's the same model as one they've already made recently. And similarly, the 767-300 this month is KLM. We're in the nice 90s scheme, but it's the same as the one they made not long ago. The reg on this one is PHBZF, whereas the one from 2022 was PHBZK. The only difference here is this one has the world is just a click away titles on the fuselage, so nothing drastically different, just a small title difference. There might be enough for KLM collectors. Doesn't really make a big difference for me. Okay, and that leads us into the 777s, which make up the remainder of the Boeings for this month. There are 3 completely individual models, but there are also 2 flaps down versions of 2 of the 3. So those ones, I guess you would count as separate if you want to, but I shouldn't think anyone's buying the flaps down and the flaps up version of the same scheme. First one up is not a flaps up or flaps down, but it is interactive. It is all Nippon Cargo. It is JA772 Foxtrot, and it's exactly the same scheme has been made before by both Phoenix and jcwings, but JC and Phoenix both made it on their non-interactive versions a few years ago. So, well, 4 or 5 years ago, 2019. So I don't know. It's such a boring scheme, the ANA cargo scheme. It's just a white aeroplane with ANA cargo written on it. I don't think that, I like the interactive 777. I reviewed one recently at the site, but I don't think it's that exciting enough that I'm going to be, high flying it. I think I'm going to put this one into workhorse. And actually, that's kind of my feeling about the 777-300 ERs that they have here as well. One of them is Qatar Airways. It is registered A7B Echo Echo. It is wearing its 25 years of excellence logo on it. Otherwise, it's a Qatar 777, and there are already loads of those, over 50 of them, in fact. And this one has been made previously both by ngmodels and Phoenix. Doesn't need another version. Workhorse. And the last one up is an airline which is quite unusual for jcwings. It's United Airlines. So that might surprise you that they're making a United 777, but the reason they're doing that is because this one has the Sydney World Pride. Little koala waving the the pride flag out of the cockpit, and that is almost certainly the reason why Gemini aren't making it, because of that pride flag, for licensing reasons, not because they're anti-gay. But yeah, it will be nice. There have been recent United 777s by Gemini. This model with the Sydney pride flag has been made by Phoenix not long ago. Yeah, again, it's hard to get overly excited. I'll just workhorse that one as well. There are 5 more models to discuss in the video. 4 of them are not Airbus and Boeing, and that is one of the good things about jcwings. They've got such a large model catalogue that they always do have some models that are not Airbus and Boeing. And they are one of the few brands that produces anything in the form of regional airliners, and 3 of these 4 are regionals. And we start with a Thai Airways ATR 72. It's in the old colours. The reg is HSTRA. Now, they did make HSTRB actually, but that was a long time ago. It was back in 2014, so 10 years ago. And that version actually had something on the door. I'm not entirely sure what it was. It's difficult to tell. So it's a slightly different scheme. This one's just got the standard colours, and the model looks actually better than that old one does, which the old one, some questionable curving of the cheek line there. And this one looks really rather decent, even though it has been made before. It was a long time ago. And you've got to say that this is going to be nice. Now, this is not the first Thai ATR that's been made. Recently, they've been making ATR 42s, but this one is a 72, so it is different. I think I'll put this one up into High Flyer as well. That's our only prop regional aircraft this month, but moving to Brazil, there are a couple of Embraer E-Jets. The first one continues a series of E-Jets that jcwings have been making recently, and is in the colours of Fuji Dream Airlines. Now, Fuji Dream Airlines has got this fleet of Embraer 175s, and they all wear a different base colour, which is pretty cool. They're really colourful, and jcwings has been making quite a few of these. They haven't always got the colour correct. I think the last one, the green one, was not, but this one is gold, which actually looks surprisingly good on the E-Jet. I've looked up the actual aircraft, and it looks like it matches the colour really well. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot, actually. And having all of these together would be quite nice. And I have to say that this gold colour is probably the nicest of the schemes that I'm seeing that JC has made. They've made navy blue, light blue, red, silver. There's a white version, actually, and that aforementioned not particularly accurate green one. But yeah, I like this a lot, and I'm going to put this one up into High Flyer. Not something I would collect, but good for Japanese collectors, and nobody else obviously is making these, because only Gemini and JC have the mold. And the other Embraer this month, now this one is probably one of the standout models of the month, and this is also an E-Jet. This one knows it E190, and it's in the colours of, well, it says Lufthansa Regional on it, but it's operated by Cityline DAECA. It's got the old, or the older Lufthansa scheme, actually, which looks really good. The box is saying there's going to be another one of these along in the future, which is not a great surprise. But yeah, gotta say, this one looks really nice and is a little surprising, and it's always nice to see more E-Jets. Now, the mold isn't perfect, but it's certainly decent enough that I haven't got a problem buying it. And I've got to say that this looks nice, and I'm sure this will be super popular amongst European collectors, though I guess I'm not 100% certain the aircraft is still operating in the scheme. It might be, but it looks really good anyway. This one's the first supersonic of the month, actually, without a shadow of a doubt. This is the sort of model that JC excels at, because it has the molds. You know, a regional jet for a really popular airline. Slam dunk, really, you'd have thought. And that's the end of the RJs for this month, but there's one more non-Airbus Boeing aircraft, and that is, I'm really pleased to say, another IL-86. This one is one I've known is coming for a while. It's Aeroflot Don. What is cool about it is it's wearing the Aeroflot scheme, but with the grey tail variant. And what's especially cool here is that it opens itself up to being a few cool custom models for airlines I'm interested in. But it looks fabulous anyway. So that's awesome. Interestingly, looking at the pictures, the aircraft doesn't seem to have aerials attached. Now that is odd. Maybe it will, and in the finished version, not really certain. But can't argue too much with an IL-86 either way. It looks great. I'm sure it'll be a delightful release. And, you know, Aeroflot Don, solid 86 operator from relatively recent times as well. Good just to see a bit of diversity with the 86 in 400 scale. There haven't been that many models. So really looking forward to this one. I think this one's going to be really good. And I'm going to supersonic this one as well. And that is 22 of the 23 models. There's only one model this month which is announced as a future release. And it's really good to see that JC are doing less of that, oh look, we're going to release this like 7 years in the future kind of thing. The one model this month that is a future release is a Max 8. And it's another one of these Max 8s which isn't operating this scheme any longer. It's wearing the BA colours because it was operating for Comair of South Africa. The reg is ZSZCA. Comair has now gone bankrupt, leaving a bit of a gap in the South African market scene, as SAA is almost, well, certainly a shadow of its former self as well. So, yeah, the South African market is quite weird and interesting. I guess just symptomatic of the country's problems. But only other release of this so far has been by Phoenix. I'm not an enormous fan of their Max mold, and looking at the release pictures of this model by them, it looks a bit rubbish. This one should be good. It's nice to see the Max getting a wider usage for some slightly more unusual airlines, and it not just being Aeroclassics doing that, but also others. I know BA isn't unusual, but Comair is. So, yeah, it's a good choice. I'll put this one up into High Flyer. So that rounds up this month for jcwings announcements. It's hard to get overly excited about this set, as it is often with jcwings, but there's definitely one or two models there which do get the pulse racing slightly, amongst quite a lot of repetition. And I would imagine, given the breadth of the set in terms of countries and aircraft types, that's the case for most people. I think a lot of people will like the EasyJet A320, even though the mold is pretty mediocre. But for me, the aircraft that are standing out as the ones that kind of do raise my pulse is definitely the Skygate 747 and the Lufthansa Regional ERJ and the Aeroflot Don IL-86. For me, they're the three that kind of are most interesting. But there's definitely other interests there. The Blue Air Max, the Thai ATR. There's some good models, but there's also a lot of repetition. And I have to say that if this were an NG set, I'd probably be a bit annoyed. You've got another Qatar 777, United 777. You've got SAS 737, which is on a dreadful mold. You've got repeat 747-8s, three of them in fact, and 757 and 767. So there's a lot of repetition in this set, and a lot of stuff which is made better by others, like the Cathay Dragon and the Condor. So it's not all great, and there is a lot of workhorse in here, but there is still, 4 or 5 really nice looking models which are quite unique and not the sort of thing that's going to be made by anyone else. So as always, for most of these sets, especially the larger sets, swings and roundabouts. Okay, cool. Well, that's it for this jcwings set for, well, who knows when. I'm guessing March, April. There's obviously been a lot of models in January. We've got the Chinese New Year coming up very soon, which is disruptive to release schedules for pretty much everyone except Aero Classics. So it wouldn't surprise me if there weren't that many releases in the next month, but we'll see. And that's it from me for now. So thanks for listening, everyone. I'll speak to you later.